Are you a bully? Is there a chance that you're a bully and you don't even know it? Maybe you've offended someone or hurt their feelings and you weren't trying to, weren't planning on it, and wouldn't have if you thought about it. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. There's a strange phenomenon as our society is shifting. And when I say shifting, it's like a tectonic plate. There are a whole lot of fault lines in our society today, and a lot of them are built around linguistics. And by linguistics, I simply mean the lingo, the word that you use, the word choices that you use. Now, ironically, all of that still goes back to the heart, because from the depths of a man's heart, he speaks, meaning whatever's deep inside you, that's what's going to come fluttering out of your mouth, good, bad, or otherwise. But there's also a reality that many people grew up in a day when certain words were, well, they were the norm. It was common. There is no time that sexual impropriety is proper. There's no time that sexual harassment, that sexual abuse, that sexual assault is acceptable. It's just not good. There's no good to come of it. I can't understand, though, that on the one hand we have 5-year-olds being taught about sexual ideologies in public school, and on the other hand we have Harvey Weinstein, who was operating as was the norm in the day in Hollywood, where a woman might use her sexual prowess to get promoted. And the two can coexist in our society today. That's mind-boggling to me, but we have the same going on in the linguistics that we use in the workplace. The same idea that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that behavior was not only not frowned upon, it was the way business was done. If you wanted to get somebody, I remember when I went through basic training 30 years ago, when I went through basic training, it was the norm that someone would yell at you, that they would scream at you, they would pick up your bed and throw it across the room, they would dismantle everything you tried to put together as far as having your clothes and your shoes and your locker in the right order. They would destroy all of it and make you start over again as a form of discipline. You can't do that in basic training anymore. Even in basic training. I remember in basic training when people were yelled at and cussed at and screamed at and called names and made fun of and mocked and humiliated. I saw grown men cry because of the way they were treated in basic training to make men of them. You can't do that anymore. I know football coaches who used to treat their players like that because that's how you make a man out of them. But you can't do that anymore. But see, some of that trickles over into the workplace, and that same kind of language, that same kind of pounding you into submission, that same kind of telling you how it's going to be, and it's my way or the highway. Some leaders still lead like that. But that's not acceptable anymore. In fact, there are places where, if you're in the South, and I grew up in the South, in the heart of the Bible Belt, if you will, where there are more churches on the corner than there are 7-Elevens. It's common to hear yes ma'am and no ma'am. I raised my children to say yes ma'am and no ma'am, to show respect for one another, to show respect for everyone, but especially for those that are older than you, who've been down the road a little further than you. Calling them names, using profanity to address them, that's going to land you in hot water pretty fast. Disrespecting your elders or disrespecting someone who you work for or you work with in the South, by using profanity, that's not a good plan. But there are still some of those who have that football coach, basic training kind of mentality that they can act like a drill sergeant and get what they want out of you by intimidation and profanity. And it's just not acceptable in the workplace, and especially in the South. And if you've moved here from the Northeast or or somewhere else, or you've had one of those jobs out in the field, in the oil fields or the coal mines or something, just working with a bunch of dudes, and locker room is the kind of conversation when you come into the office and there are ladies there, that's not acceptable. But if you take that same work environment and move it to, say, Seattle or San Francisco or Austin, where it's a more modernized millennial, Generation Z environment, you got a whole different kind of linguistics problem. And your linguistics problem isn't necessarily that you're outdated in profanity and yes ma'am and no ma'am are not accepted, but now we have new sets of rules where pronouns, him and her and them and zer, are significantly important. They're not to me. I've always been a he, him. I wouldn't know any different. But to them, they are. And here's the rub. Bullying isn't about how you felt when you said it. It's about how they felt when they heard it. It doesn't matter what your basic training drill instructor said to you 10, 20, 35 years ago. What matters is what you say to the people you work with now. It doesn't matter how your football coach treated you, or your sons on the football field, or your daughter on the basketball court. What matters is how you treat the people you deal with now. And because the work environment has changed, what Harvey Weinstein thought was a young lady using her sexual prowess to get a promotion is now sexual harassment. What was then the norm and acceptable and even applauded by some is now criminal activity. And you better be aware of that. You got to keep up with the times, and you got to keep up with the environment that you're working in. And you may realistically be a bully and not even know it, because it's not about you. It's not about what you're comfortable with. It's not about what was right or wrong 20 years ago or 10 years ago or, heaven forbid, 15 minutes ago. And if you travel for work, and you work primarily in the South where profanity is the biggest offense, and you work for a couple of weeks in New Jersey where profanity is a common part of the conversation, you barely can get salt across the table without an F-bomb, be ready for that. That's the environment you've been transported to. But if you maybe get moved to the San Francisco area or Seattle or Austin, be ready for their offense to be around pronouns and genders and sexuality. You got to know where you're going. You got to know who you're talking to. Because in the end, being a bully isn't about what you're comfortable saying. It's about what they're comfortable hearing. Now, here's one thing that I do know. When you love other people, just love them. You don't have to like them. You don't have to agree with their politics. You don't even have to agree with their lingo or their choice of pronouns. But if you just love them and include them and treat them with the respect and the dignity of being a human being, in that event, you'll find that you're not a bully. You'll find that it's pretty easy to let them be them and you be you and let life work its way out. Because in the end, bullying is not about how you feel when you said it. It's about how they felt when the engagement was done. Leaders should lead with love and not be bullies. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell I Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
If attitude is going to have a deep impact on your business and bottom line, make it a positive attitude with a positive impact. Visit jlorennorris.com/attitude hack